Hello and welcome to TVB News. Chief Executive John Lee said today the National Day fireworks display will return to Hong Kong after a 5-year hiatus. The tourism industry predicts more tourists will travel to the city for a longer break because of the Mid-Autumn Festival and National Day. Mimo Singhai reports.
While it is a tradition to mark National Day by displaying fireworks over Victoria Harbour on the first day of October, the event has been suspended since 2019 owing to social unrest and the pandemic. Speaking ahead of the Executive Council meeting today, Chief Executive John Lee announced the resumption of the fireworks on National Day. This means the public will be able to enjoy the display again. To celebrate National Day, the CE said a series of activities and concessions will also be offered to the public so as to bring vibrancy to the city's nightlife. In 2018, the last time a firework display lit up the sky on October 1st, over 260,000 visitors gathered at Victoria Harbour. Timothy Cho, Executive Director of the Hong Kong Tourism Association, said the resumption of the fireworks display will boost the city's tourism as mainland visitors enjoy such shows. He anticipates more tourists will stay overnight in the city after the show because it will not end before 8 or 9 p.m. Meanwhile, the CE said the government is working on a plan to promote the city's night economy, and details will be announced next week.
We have been liaising with different sectors and have received positive feedback from them. There will be extensive participation. For example, many shopping malls will be extending their operating hours and providing various concessions and coupons.
Catering and wholesale sector lawmaker Peter Siu believes night activities will be useful in boosting the night economy as they can increase the consumption power of both locals and tourists. Mimos 9, TVB News.
The police are following up new allegations of sex crimes related to university orientation camps. In the latest allegations, a female student from the Education University of Hong Kong reported to the police that she was raped while participating in an orientation camp held in Yuen Long in July. The rape suspect was also accused of having peeked into another female Education University student's bath during another orientation camp held on Lantau Island last month. Earlier, a University of Hong Kong student was accused of sexual assault on a new student during an orientation camp. Today, the chief executive spoke out on the issue.
We must not tolerate any such behavior because the university students are the pillars of society in the future. We have expectations on them for them to behave. Any law-breaking behavior will be unacceptable. For school sponsoring bodies, management of universities, they need to ensure that a proper learning environment is provided within campuses.
The State Council delivered a blueprint last week for developing the Shenzhen Park within the Hetao Shenzhen Hong Kong Science and Technology Innovation Cooperation Zone. Authorities noted the central government has tailor-made the positioning of the zone to promote innovation and technology development of the Greater Bay Area. Sharon Tang reports.
Details of the plan were announced at a press briefing in Beijing today. The National Development and Reform Commission noted the central government has tailor-made the positioning of the Hetao district or the Lok Ma Chau Loop. It will join Hengqin, Qianhai and Nansha as the 4 major platforms in the Greater Bay Area to promote cooperation among Hong Kong, Macau and Guangdong Province. For this purpose, the 4 places will tap into their strengths. Guolan Feng, a member of the commission, said although the loop is the smallest among the 4 platforms in terms of its area, it has the uniqueness of connecting Hong Kong and Shenzhen. He said the goal is to set up an efficient mechanism between Hong Kong and Shenzhen technologies by 2025. With the Huanggang border crossing expected to complete its renovation, a brand new innovation and technology hub will be formed in 2035. The National Development and Reform Commission also said for important topics that involve the Greater Bay Area, the chief executives of Hong Kong and Macau will be invited to take part in discussions and set up task forces for follow-up actions. Hong Kong's Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan also attended and spoke at the press briefing. Chan said he will expedite efforts to allow designated IT staff members to cross the borders without checking their IDs. Mayor of Shenzhen Qin Weizhong revealed that 40 approved projects have already entered the Shenzhen Park. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
An air bridge at Hong Kong International Airport was put out of service on Monday after suffering a short circuit during Super Typhoon Saola and descended to the ground. Meanwhile, Chief Executive John Lee said he has now asked the Chief Secretary for Administration to review typhoon damage prevention measures. Super Typhoon Saola swept over Hong Kong last weekend, prompting authorities to issue the city's first number 10 signal in 5 years. Authorities received over 1,000 reports of fallen trees. John Lee thanked all sectors for working together to minimize the damage Saola could have potentially caused in the city. Indonesia's president has warned members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations against getting dragged into big power rivalry. This as ASEAN leaders gathered for a summit in Jakarta. The bloc is seeking to dispel worry about rifts over peace efforts in Myanmar and to reaffirm the relevance of their disparate group. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Indonesian President Joko Widodo, opening a summit of the 10-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations in Jakarta, called on the group to devise a long-term tactical strategy that is relevant and meets people's expectations. Widodo said ASEAN has agreed to not be a proxy to any powers. Don't turn our ship into an arena for rivalry that is destructive. He added, we as leaders have to ensure this ship keeps moving and sailing, and we must become its captain to achieve peace, stability and prosperity together. Founded at the height of the Cold War in the 1960s, the politically diverse grouping prioritizes unity and non-interference in members' internal affairs. However, critics say that has limited its scope for action when it comes to handling issues like fellow member Myanmar, where the military seized power in a 2021 coup. ASEAN has banned Myanmar's military leaders from its high-level meetings. But differences in opinion on the matter have emerged within the group, which currently includes Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand and Vietnam. Indonesia is attempting to engage all sides to push for an ASEAN peace plan to resolve the Myanmar issue. Conversely, Thailand has been trying to engage with Myanmar's military leaders. Still, Indonesian President Widodo said today the peace plan will remain the guide for the bloc's approach to Myanmar. China and its increasing rivalry with the United States also looms over the latest ASEAN meeting. Some ASEAN members have focused on developing close diplomatic, business and military ties with Beijing. Others are more wary of doing so. Later this week, ASEAN leaders will hold an East Asia summit. This is a wider forum that includes China, India, Japan, Russia and the United States. Adding to unease about ASEAN's relevance, US President Joe Biden is not attending the talks. Vice President Kamala Harris will attend instead. Chinese Premier Li Qiang will also be present at the summit. Daniel Rao, TVB News.
Turkish President Tayyip Recep Erdogan on Monday met Russian leader Vladimir Putin in Sochi in an attempt to revive the grain deal that allows for safe passage of export ships from the Black Sea. Putin reiterated that Russia is ready to return to the deal once all agreements relevant to the accord are fulfilled. Russia quit the deal in July after 1 year, blaming the West for restricting Russia's agricultural exports from reaching a global market. Moscow said at the time that any foreign-registered ships traveling to Ukraine's Black Sea ports would be considered military targets. Putin said that grain deal corridors should not be used for military purposes. Erdogan, who played a key role in forging the initial deal, along with the United Nations, said he expected a solution to be reached within a short time. Welcome back to TVB News. A dog died after its leash was caught in the doors of a lift in Taiwan this morning. Memo Sangai with more.
After the accident, a towel was used to cover the dog's body. The domestic helper who was with the dog was frightened and had to be comforted by others. The incident happened before 10 a.m. this morning when the helper was returning to her employer's home after walking 3 dogs. Sources say one of the dogs did not follow the helper into the lift when the doors closed, causing its leash to become stuck between the panels and strangle the animal as the machine rose. An expert from the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals believes the accident could have been avoided.
The helper was handling 3 dogs at the same time. It's very challenging. When you have more than 1 dog in a household, it will be ideal 1 person handle 1 dog, because each dog is individual.
What should dog owners and carers do to prevent similar accidents happening in the future?
When we take the dog out, I would suggest people not to use the collar only. It's the best, to use the harness. If your dog were putting on leash all the time, then probably you have to consider an anti-pulling harness.
The expert reminded carers to focus on the behaviors of dogs when they are out for a walk, because the animal can become nervous or excited in different surroundings. Memos 9, TVB News.
The standby signal number 1 is now in force. The observatory will cancel all tropical cyclone warning signals when tropical depression Haikui no longer poses a threat to Hong Kong.
Haikui is expected to move across inland eastern Guangdong and weaken further. The chance of having strong winds generally over Hong Kong is relatively low. However, there will still be occasional strong winds over the coastal waters of eastern Guangdong at first.
The city's top court today partially approved an appeal by former convener of the Civil Human Rights Front, Jimmy Sham, for recognizing overseas same-sex marriages. The appellant thinks that Hong Kong violated the Basic Law and intruded on equal rights by not allowing same-sex marriages and not recognizing same-sex marriages registered overseas. Those arguments were dismissed by the Court of Final Appeal, saying relevant laws have only granted constitutional rights to opposite-sex marriages. But the city's top court agreed with the appellant's view that the SAR government fails to provide an alternative means of legal recognition for same-sex relationships in order to meet basic social requirements. 3 of the 5-judge panel ruled in favor of the argument. A marriage equality group said the decision is a major step forward for equality and social harmony. As British lawmakers head back to Parliament this week after their summer break, thousands of UK children won't be returning to their classrooms because their schools are at risk of collapse from crumbling concrete. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been accused of failing to fully fund a program to rebuild England's schools while he was Chancellor of the Exchequer. Meanwhile, the Education Secretary has had to apologize for using expletives during a television interview about the concrete problems in schools. Tracy Furness has more.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak insists it's not his fault that more than 150 schools were told last week to shut some or all of their buildings because they contain a type of lightweight air-filled concrete widely used in construction between the 1950s and the 1990s.
Actually, one of the first things I did as Chancellor in my first spending review in 2020 was to announce a new 10-year school rebuilding programme for 500 schools. Now, that equates to about 50 schools a year that will be refurbished or rebuilt. And if you look at what we've been doing over the previous decade, that's completely in line with what we've always done, about 50 or so schools a year refurbished or rebuilt here. There are around 22,000 schools in England, and the important thing to know is we expect that 95% of those schools won't be impacted by this.
Schools are scrambling to find classroom space in nearby establishments or arranging online instruction after the government's last-minute directive sparked when 3 schools thought to be safe suffered collapses over the summer. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan said 156 schools were on the critical list so far. But the government says hundreds of schools that use reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, known as RAAC, could be affected. Meanwhile, Keegan had to make a public apology Monday after using an expletive in an interview on British television over the weekend when talking about the concrete problem in schools.
And I'd like to apologise for my choice language. That was unnecessary. But it was an off-the-cuff remark, basically, based on the interview. The interview had been pressing me quite hard, why I hadn't solved this issue, which had been going on since 1994.
The use of RAAC is not limited to schools. Courts, hospitals and other public buildings were also built using this concrete, often for roofs. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
U.S. First Lady Jill Biden has tested positive for COVID-19 just days before President Joe Biden is due to travel to a Group of 20 summit in India. President Biden, who is now 80 years old, has tested negative for the virus. The White House did not immediately comment as to whether Biden's trip will be affected. He is expected to fly to New Delhi on Thursday to attend the G20 summit and then on to Hanoi on Sunday. Jill Biden's symptoms are said to be mild. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.